The wire snapped taut under his gloved hands. Silas Rennick worked the fence stretcher one notch tighter, boots planted in the March mud where snow had melted an hour ago. Coldwater Draw stretched behind him 47 acres of thawing ground. An engine climbed the road. A charcoal Ford F-350 rolled up and stopped at the leaning gate. The door opened. Boots met gravel. "Do you know who this land belongs to?" the woman asked. Silas did not look up from his cutters. "Mine. Since last Tuesday." She stood there a long moment. The camera would have held on his hands. 5 days earlier, Silas had signed the papers at the Sheridan County Land Office on a Tuesday afternoon that smelled of old carpet and printer toner. The clerk was a woman past 60 with reading glasses on a beaded chain. She looked at the deed for a long time before she looked at him. "Nobody has touched Coldwater Draw in 20 years, she said. It was not a warning. It was the kind of sentence a person offers when they want to be sure the other person has heard themselves. Silas set his pen down. He had heard. He drove home to a 2-bedroom house with a leaking tin roof and a wood stove that still drew clean. The kitchen linoleum was cracked in 3 places. The bathroom had 1 working faucet. There was a rocking chair in the front room that had been there when they walked in and would be there when they walked out. Josie, 8 years old, walked every room twice, the way she did anywhere new. She checked the closets. She looked under the sink. She stood on her tiptoes at the front window to see how far the porch went. She found the coop out back collapsed on one side, tar paper peeling but standing. "Chickens?" she asked. "Weekend," Silas said. He meant it. They had come from Bozeman with a truck, 2 duffel bags, a box of books, and the ashes of his wife Hannah, in a walnut urn that Josie had insisted travel in the cab. Everything else had been sold or given away. He had $31,000 in the bank, the deed to 47 acres, and a plan he did not intend to explain to anybody who did not already understand it. He built a fire that first night. Josie slept on the couch with her coat over her. Because they had not yet made the beds, Silas sat on the porch with his back against the wall and watched the ridgeline black against a sky that still had winter in it. He did not think about Hannah. Some nights he could. Some nights he chose not to. That night he chose not to. On the 3rd morning, the Ford F-350 came back. Daylight this time. Marlo Ashcombe stepped down with a rolled paper survey under her arm. "I'm sorry about the other day," she said. "I should have introduced myself. Marlo Ashcombe. My family runs the Bar A." Silas nodded once. He had heard of the Ashcombes the way anyone in Sheridan County had heard of them. 12,000 acres, 4 generations. Bo Ashcombe on the wall of the State Cattlemen's Association. She unrolled the survey against the tailgate of his truck. Her finger traced a line. "Your south fence is running about 3 meters into our ground. The 1994 survey has it here." She was polite. She was not asking. Silas leaned in. He looked at the contour lines, not the boundary. He saw the ridge fall, saw where the old fence had been drifted by frost heave over 2 decades. "I'll move it," he said. 3 days. Marlo waited for the second half of the sentence. It did not come. She had spent her life inside negotiations that started with agreement and moved into subtraction. This one had ended before it began. She looked at him again. The boots worn honestly, resold twice at the heel. The way he had touched the survey reading elevation, not property. The way he had said ground, not land. The screen door opened. Josie came out barefoot with a chipped enamel mug of well water and held it up to Marlo with both hands. "For you," she said. Marlo took the mug. She drank. She looked at the child once steady, not curious. "Thank you, sweetheart." She left. In the rear view, Silas had already gone back to the wire before her dust had settled. That night, in the library of the Bar A ranch house, Marlo pulled up the county recorder's file for the Coldwater Draw transfer. She wanted the name. She wanted to place it. Silas J. Rennick. Purchaser. Cash sale, $31,000. No financing. She stopped. She read it twice. She stood, walked to the far shelf, the shelf she had not touched in 5 years, since she had moved home from Colorado, and pulled down a slim gray volume, Adaptive Rotational Grazing in Semi-Arid Rangelands, Volume 2, 2016, Montana State University Extension. She opened the cover. S. J. Rennick. She turned to the dedication page. The paper was soft from the number of times she had turned it long ago. "For Hannah, who taught me the seasons." Marlo sat down on the arm of the leather chair. She did not sit in the chair. She sat on the arm as if the chair itself would ask questions she was not ready to answer. The Ashcombe Barre had converted to rotational grazing in 2015. Her father had called the author a paranoid recluse who would not put his full name on his own work. She had defended the method for 3 years at the family table. She had cited S.J. Rennick 43 times in her master's thesis at Colorado State. 43. She remembered because the number had made her advisor laugh. She had looked for him twice, once through the extension office in Bozeman, where a polite young woman told her Mr. Rennick had not been affiliated with the university for several years, and that no forwarding address was on file. Once through a mutual acquaintance at USDA, who said only, "I think he lost somebody. Give him room." Both trails ended at a P.O. box in Bozeman that had been closed in 2019, the year Hannah had died on the tracks outside Livingston. She would learn that later. She sat on the arm of the chair a long time. Outside the window, the horse barn light was on because her father had gone out to check a foaling mare an hour before. She listened to the barn door slide open and closed, the way she had listened to it every night of her life. She thought of the man at the fence, the way he had said ground, the way he had read the elevation lines on the survey without looking at the boundary once, the way he had accepted the correction on the fence without argument, because he had already seen what she had come to say before she had said it. She said nothing to her father. She said nothing to anyone. The next morning she drove back to Coldwater Draw, under the pretext of checking the fence. Silas had moved it. 3 meters, clean, the wire retensioned, the posts reset with fresh gravel at the base. He was rebuilding the corner brace when she pulled up. "You ever work out of Bozeman?" she asked. He looked at her a beat longer than he had to. "A while." She did not ask the second question. He did not offer. Instead, he walked her out to the well and pointed at the pressure gauge. 22 pounds. It should have been 60. "Something upstream," he said, diverting off the Tongue tributary. "I'll walk it tomorrow." She nodded. She stayed another 10 minutes without speaking. Then she left. At the gate, Silas stood with his hand on the post. Josie came up beside him barefoot. "Is she nice, Daddy?" Silas took a moment. "She's thinking about something hard." Josie considered this. Then she went back to the chickens. 3 days later, the trucks came. Duncan Vandegrift arrived at Coldwater Draw in a matte black Suburban, with a lawyer in the passenger seat and a Wyoming State Engineer's Office fieldman in the back. He was 60, silver at the temples, and had the trained warmth of a man who had chaired the Sheridan County Cattlemen's Association for 11 years. "Mr. Rennick," he said, extending a hand. "Duncan Vandegrift. Wanted to welcome you to the neighborhood personally." Silas shook his hand. He did not smile. Duncan looked past him at the barn, at the corral, at the ridge. His eyes did the arithmetic quickly. "Beautiful ground," he said. "Been abandoned too long. I've been trying to bring it back into a working operation for years. I'd like to make you an offer. $46,500 cash. This week." That was 50% above what Silas had paid. "No, thank you." Duncan's smile did not move. "I understand. Fresh start, nice thought, but there's something you should know. Coldwater Draw's water rights are legally speaking unclear. Ellis Prescott, the last owner, had some paperwork issues in 2003. If you try to irrigate off the Tongue tributary, you're looking at potential fines from the state engineer's office. Substantial ones." The field man in the back said nothing. Silas nodded slowly, as if considering. He was not considering. He was memorizing the field man's face and the name stitched above the pocket. "Marston, thank you for the visit." Duncan waited another beat, then climbed back into the Suburban. It rolled off. The dust took a full minute to settle. That night, at the Ashcombe Barre, Beau called his daughter into the study. He was 72, thick in the shoulders, still stood every morning at 5. "Duncan just called," he said. "Says the Coldwater Draw thing is going to be complicated. Says he'd appreciate us staying out of it." Marlowe stood in the doorway with her arms folded. "Duncan's an ally," Beau said. "In the association. On the water board. I don't want anything getting in the way of that." "I hear you." She did not agree. She did not refuse. She waited a moment, then said, "Dad, the white papers we based our whole grazing conversion on, in 2015. Do you remember the author?" Beau waved his hand. "Some academic. Bozeman, I think." "Why?" "Just wondering." She went to bed early. She did not sleep. 3 days later, at first light, Silas opened the main irrigation valve on the west line. Water pushed through for 6 seconds, dribbled, and stopped. He walked the ditch north. Half a mile up, at the property line, he found a fresh concrete diversion structure with a Wyoming State Engineer's Office placard bolted to the front. The paint on the placard was not yet dry. He stood there a while. He took 2 photographs on his phone. He walked back. Josie was waiting in the yard with 2 mason jars of well water for him and 1 for herself. "We got work," he said. He smiled at her, and it reached his eyes because she was there. She handed him the water. He drank half of it. Inside him, the name Duncan Vandegrift was already set in the place his mind put things he intended to be patient about. That same afternoon, driving home from town, Marlowe took the back road along the Tongue tributary. She saw the new concrete diversion. She slowed. She stopped. She got out. She stood at the guardrail for 2 minutes. Then she took a photograph on her phone. She got back in her truck. She sent the photograph to no one. 7 days passed. Coldwater Draw did not get water. Silas did not file a complaint. He did not call the Sheridan Press. He did not put a lawyer on retainer. He worked. He was up at 4:30 every morning. He built the fire, made coffee in an old blue enamel pot, and sat with it on the porch until first light before he moved. Then he moved without stopping, until the light went again. He walked the contours of the pasture with a hand level and orange flags, and dug shallow keyline swales with a borrowed single-bottom plow behind the tractor. He mulched with straw he cut from the last standing patch of last year's rye that had gone to seed on the back 40. He unspooled seed he had brought in canvas sacks from Bozeman Western wheatgrass, blue grama, needle and thread, the native cool season mix he had spent 6 years selecting on a research plot outside Belgrade. He planted by hand where the tractor could not go. He knelt. He set each plug of grass into a slit he had made with a hoary knife, tamped the soil with the flat of his palm, moved on. He was rebuilding the sponge under the ground. Water would come or it would not. Either way, the ground would be ready. Josie fed the chickens twice a day. She had 4 hens now, red-laying breeds Silas had bought from a widow outside Ranchester. She had named them after her 4 favorite states. Wyoming was the smallest. Montana was the boss. Marlowe stopped by 3 times that week. The first time she brought a spool of high-tensile wire. "I ordered extra," she said. "Don't need it, take it." The second time she brought a 50-pound bag of layer feed. "Wrong delivery. If I take it back, they'll charge restocking." The third time she brought nothing. She stood at the edge of the pasture in her work gloves and watched him plant a plug of blue grama with a hoary knife. She watched for 10 minutes. Then she said, "You're rebuilding the soil profile without irrigation. There's only one person I know who ever taught that method." Silas straightened. He did not answer. He walked over to the tool bag by the fence, took out a second hoary, and held it out to her. She took it. They worked side by side for 45 minutes without a word. The wind moved across the ridge. A red-tailed hawk turned above the north fence and went south. Josie came out with 2 thick slices of bread and butter on a chipped plate, gave 1 to her father, gave 1 to Marlowe, and went back to the chickens. Marlowe ate the bread standing up. She had eaten $1,000 dinners at cattlemen's galas in Denver and Fort Worth and Kansas City. She could not remember what any of them had tasted like. She remembered this one. The butter had almost melted. The crust was thick, the crumbs still warm in the middle. At dusk, she left. Silas walked her to her truck. "Thank you," he said. She looked at him. "For what?" "The bread. She likes when someone eats it." Marlowe nodded once. She did not trust her voice. At home, in the library, she opened the leather-bound thesis she had not read since her defense at Colorado State 15 years earlier. Her advisor had signed it in pencil on the flyleaf. She turned to the acknowledgments page, to S.J. Rennick. "Whoever you are, thank you for making me a better student of the land." She closed the laptop. She sat in the dark for a long time. She did not turn on the lamp. Downstairs, Beau was watching the 10 o'clock news. She heard the low murmur of the anchor's voice through the floor. It was a sound she had grown up on. It was a sound she knew was going to change now, one way or another, whether her father was ready or not. The Sheridan County Cattlemen's Association held its monthly meeting on the second Thursday at the Elks Lodge on Coffin Avenue. Duncan Vandegrift chaired. He had chaired for 11 years running. Silas walked in at 7. in a clean-pressed work shirt and the same boots he had worn every day since March. He sat in the last row and took off his hat. He set it upside down on the folding chair beside him. He put his hands on his knees. He did not speak to anyone. Marlo sat second row, beside her father. She saw Silas come in. She did not turn. She had known he would come. She had also known he would sit at the back. She had spent the drive over telling herself she did not know why either of those things was important to her. Duncan opened with routine business brand inspection changes, spring calf reporting, the state fair schedule. Then, 40 minutes in, he moved to new business. "We have a membership review item," he said. "The Coldwater Draw property has changed hands. Standing policy requires the new owner to demonstrate water compliance before the parcel can be relisted as an active operation. Given the ongoing questions about that specific parcel's rights on the Tongue tributary, I recommend we table Coldwater Draw's membership review until the state engineer's office issues a formal determination." He was smiling as he said it. Reasonable. Procedural. A man in the fifth row stood up. His name was Harlan Boyce. He ran 400 head on 900 acres east of Story. Duncan. Question. There's a new diversion structure on the Tongue that went in last month. I drive past it every day. There was no association notice. No public hearing. Whose is it? Duncan's smile stayed level. That's a state engineer's office matter. Not ours. It's on our watershed. It's a state matter, Harlan. Sit down. Harlan sat down slowly. Marlo stood up. The room noticed. Her father looked up at her from his seat without moving his head. "Point of order, Mr. Chairman," she said. Her voice was quiet, and it carried. "Miss Ashcombe, I move that we table the Coldwater Draw membership question until an independent water rights survey has been completed. Not the state engineer's office, an independent one. Commissioned by this association." There was a small, dry silence. "Second," said Harlan Boyce. Duncan looked at Bo Ashcombe. Bo did not look back at him. Bo looked at his own hands. The vote was 9-5 in favor. Duncan called it politely. His eyes did not move the same way his mouth did. The meeting adjourned at 9:04. In the parking lot, Silas waited by his truck. Marlo came out with her jacket over her arm. "Thank you," he said. She stopped in front of him. "I did it for the ground. Not for you." He nodded. He understood that this was the way a person says both things at once. She got in her truck. Halfway home, her phone rang. Unknown number. The voice on the other end was old, thin, and steady. "My name is Amos Kettering. I know what happened in 2003. Have you got half an hour to hear an old man out?" She pulled over onto the shoulder. She turned the engine off. "Yes." Amos Kettering's caravan sat on a 2-acre patch of hardpan 2 miles north of Coldwater Draw. He had lived there 40 years. He had been foreman for Ellis Prescott from 1978 until Prescott went under. He was 78 now. He opened the door in a wool shirt buttoned to the throat. "Come in, Miss Ashcombe. I've made coffee. It's not good coffee, but it's hot." His hands trembled as he poured. He caught her seeing it and gave her a small, tired smile. "Parkinson's. Slow. I've got time yet." He sat down across from her at a formica table. He put a battered green ledger between them. "In 1919, he said, Ellis's grandfather filed for senior water rights on the Tongue tributary, 47 acres of irrigation. The filing was accepted. The certificate hung on the wall of the Prescott ranch house until the day Ellis died." He opened the ledger. Inside the front cover was a notarized photocopy of the 1919 filing certificate. Blue ink, cursive, a county seal in dark red wax. "In 2003, Amos said, Ellis went in to renew the beneficial use documentation. Duncan Vandegrift was a Sheridan County Water Commissioner then. Just a commissioner, not a chairman, not a millionaire yet." He turned the page. Behind a plastic sleeve was a 2003 filing receipt. It transferred the 1919 certificate to a parcel on the Montana border, owned by a limited liability corporation, with no listed beneficiary. The signature at the bottom read Duncan Vandegrift, Commissioner. "Ellis lost his water in the 2003 drought," Amos said, "and the 2004 drought. The bank called his loans in June of 2005. He hanged himself in the horse barn that August. I found him." Marlo put her hands flat on the table to keep them from shaking. The coffee cup rattled anyway. "You've had this ledger for 21 years. "I have. Why now?" Amos looked out the window at the wind on the sage. My son passed in November. Duncan held a promissory note on my son's ranch outside Ranchester. If I ever spoke, he took the ranch. My son is gone. The ranch is gone. There is nothing left that Duncan can hold over me. He turned the ledger toward her. Take it. She looked at the ledger. She did not move. Why me? Why not Silas? Amos poured himself half a cup he did not drink. That man out there. He does not need proof to do the right thing. You do. So does your father. So does the association. So does the state. He paused. I saw you stand up at that meeting. You were the only one. She picked up the ledger. Her hands were cold. Mr. Kettering. Thank you. Don't thank me, Miss Ashcombe. Just don't put it back down. She drove home in the dark. She took the county road past Coldwater Draw. The porch lamp was on. Silas was standing outside the horse barn with Josie. He was pointing up at the sky. The girl was following his finger. Cassiopeia, probably. It was the season for it. Marlowe did not slow down. At the bar she walked into her father's study and set the ledger on his desk. He was reading. Read this, she said. Beau put down his book. He opened the ledger. He turned the pages, one at a time, for a long time. He read the 2003 receipt 3 times. He read the signature. He closed the ledger. He rubbed his face with his hand. Christ, he said. Christ Almighty. He looked up at his daughter. What do you want to do? I want to call a special session. He nodded. Do it. The special session of the Sheridan County Cattlemen's Association convened at the Elks Lodge on a Wednesday afternoon at 2 o'clock. Attendance was mandatory for voting members. Present, in addition to the members, a representative from the Wyoming State Engineer's Office named Diane Halbrook, a water rights attorney named Everett Sloan from Cheyenne, retained privately by Beau Ashcombe, and a reporter from the Sheridan Press named Colby Grantham. Duncan Vandegrift arrived with 3 lawyers of his own. He was wearing a charcoal suit and the same trained warmth he had brought to Coldwater Draw. He nodded to Marlowe as he passed. She nodded back. Amos Kettering sat in the 3rd row on the aisle. Silas sat 2 rows behind him. Josie was at the bar with the housekeeper. The reporter, Colby Grantham, sat at the press table with a legal pad and a small recorder. Marlowe presented for 11 minutes. She did not accuse. She did not raise her voice. She laid down the 1919 certificate, the 2003 receipt, the signature, and the timeline. She put each document under the overhead projector. The room watched each image come up on the screen. She let the paper speak. Duncan's lead attorney rose. A private ledger has no legal standing. This is hearsay wrapped in nostalgia. Diane Halbrook, from the state engineer's office, stood. That is correct as far as it goes. However, the Wyoming State Engineer's Office cross-referenced the 1919 certificate against the Master Archive in Cheyenne over the past 48 hours. The original filing is intact. The 2003 transfer was executed without notice to Ellis Prescott, without beneficial use documentation, and without the required public posting. Under Wyoming Statute 41-3-101, the transfer is void ab initio. The room went still. The 1919 senior water right, Diane Halbrook said, remains attached to the Coldwater Draw parcel. It always has. Silas was called to speak. He walked to the microphone. He did not look at Duncan. He did not look at Marlowe. Water does not belong to anybody, he said. It runs through the ground of whoever knows how to care for it. He sat down. The vote was called by roll. Each name, each answer. It took 9 minutes. Beau Ashcombe voted first aye and did not look at Duncan when he said it. Harlan Boyce voted aye. The 2 votes against came from ranchers, whose grazing leases ran through Vandegrift land. Everybody understood. Nobody blamed them. 11-2. Duncan Vandegrift's membership was revoked. The association then voted unanimously to forward the file to the Wyoming Field Office of the Federal Bureau of Investigation on suspicion of federal land fraud. Duncan stood. He walked toward the door slowly with his lawyers at his back. He stopped at Silas's row. He leaned down. His voice was low. You think you won? Silas did not look up. I didn't come here to win. I came to irrigate 47 acres. Duncan straightened. He walked out. After the meeting, Beau Ashcombe crossed the room to Silas. It was the first time the 2 men had spoken. Beau put his hand out. Silas took it. My daughter tells me I misquoted you for 10 years, Beau said. I owe you an apology. You applied it correctly. That's what matters. Bo held on to the handshake a moment longer. I lost the author. I found the man. I'll take it. Josie had come in with Marlowe at the back of the room. She walked up to her father. She did not speak. She reached up and hooked her small finger around the little finger of his working hand. Silas looked down at her. He nodded. 3 weeks later, at 6:17 on a Saturday morning, water came back to Coldwater Draw. The illegal diversion had been dismantled by a state crew on the Tuesday. The lower valves had been flushed on the Wednesday. Silas and Josie stood at the head of the main ditch on the Saturday and watched the first flow work its way down. It came slow at first, brown with sediment, then cleared. It ran the length of the pasture and disappeared into the swales he had cut in April. The ground drank. Josie squatted at the ditch edge and put her hand in. It's cold, Daddy. That's how you know it's the bighorns. Marlowe pulled up in her truck at 7:30. She had not called ahead. She came around the back with a coil of PVC line over her shoulder. Bar A had extra, she said. Been sitting in the equipment shed for 2 years. Silas took the coil. They worked through the morning. They ran the line from the head ditch into the small gravity system he had rigged for the kitchen garden and the chicken yard. She held the fittings while he glued them. He passed her tools without naming them. She had the right one ready before he asked. At noon, Josie came out with sandwiches and 3 bottles of well water. She sat on a plank next to Marlowe. She ate a bite of her sandwich. She turned to Marlowe. Daddy showed me Cassiopeia last night. It's the W in the sky. Do you want to hear about it? Yes, Josie told her. It took 4 minutes. Marlowe listened as if she were being told a state secret. Silas watched his daughter talk to this woman, and he did not say anything. He did not need to. Late afternoon, Marlowe stood by her truck with a thin manila folder in her hand. This isn't a demand, she said. This is a request. She held it out. He took it. Inside was a formal proposal from Ashcombe Bar A, offering S.J. Rennick a position as independent technical consultant for a Bighorn Foothills rangeland restoration program, with a 3-year retainer, discretion over publication credit, and no requirement to identify himself publicly if he did not choose to. The retainer figure at the top of page 2 would keep Coldwater Draw solvent for a decade. Silas read the figure. He did not react. I'll think about it, he said. That's all I'm asking. She looked at him a moment longer. She started to say something else, then didn't. She got in the truck. She left. That night on the porch, Silas sat with an unopened bottle of beer. Josie was asleep. The wind came off the ridge cold, the way High Plains wind does even in June. He opened the folder. On the last page, in handwriting he had not seen before but recognized immediately, was one line. I looked for you from the time I was 22. I did not know it was you. He read it 3 times. He closed the folder. He did not open the beer. Late July. Duncan Vandegrift was indicted in federal court on 7 counts, including water rights fraud, wire fraud, and obstruction of justice. His ranch was placed in receivership pending trial. The Federal Bureau of Investigation seized 4 filing cabinets from his office. The Sheridan Press ran the story on the front page under a photograph of the county courthouse, and did not print Silas Rennick's name once. Colby Grantham had checked with Silas by phone the night before the story went to press. Silas had said, "Leave me out of it." Colby had left him out of it. Amos Kettering was called as the state's principal witness in the preliminary hearing. He arrived at the federal courthouse in Cheyenne in a 30-year-old tuxedo jacket, pressed flat that morning by a neighbor's wife who had refused payment. He testified for 42 minutes. His voice did not break. His hands did not shake at the stand. He read the 2003 receipt aloud. He named the parcel on the Montana border. He named Duncan Vandegrift. When he stepped down, the U.S. attorney shook his hand. Amos said, "I'm sorry it took me 21 years." The U.S. attorney said, "You're here now." Silas accepted the consulting position. He signed the paperwork at the Bar A ranch office on a Wednesday morning with Marlowe on the other side of the table and no lawyers in the room. He asked for one revision. The retainer figure was to be reduced by 40%, with the difference going to a scholarship at Sheridan College in the name of Ellis Prescott. Marlowe read the revision. She signed it without a word. The first paper he published under his full name, Silas J. Rennick, appeared in the August issue of the Journal of Range Management. Marlo Ashcombe was listed as co-author. The paper was on senior water right integration in adaptive rotational grazing systems. It ran to 19 pages. Bo kept a copy on his desk with a bookmark at page 11. Bo Ashcombe called Silas one evening. "Come to dinner Sunday. Bring your girl. It's time." They came Sunday. Josie wore her one dress. Silas wore a clean flannel and his second-best boots. Dinner was elk chili, cornbread, and an apple pie Marlo had made herself in a kitchen the size of Silas's whole living room. "Bo," said Grace. Josie sat next to Marlo at the long table and asked, halfway through the pie, if she could see the horses. Marlo took her out to the barn. She saddled an old Appaloosa named Juno, 23 years old, mostly retired, and led her around the sand ring at a walk for 20 minutes with Josie in the saddle. Josie held on with both hands and did not say a word the whole time. Her face was set the way children set their faces when they are trying not to look too happy. Silas stood at the fence and watched. Bo came up beside him. The two men leaned on the top rail together. "My wife died when Marlo was 11, Bo said. "She was never taught how to let somebody take care of her," Silas said. "She's learning. So are you." Silas did not answer. He kept his eyes on his daughter. They drove back to Coldwater Draw under a copper sky. Josie fell asleep against the passenger door. Silas drove slow. He glanced at her once, twice, and then he did not glance again. He just drove. The road curved and rose. The sun set behind the bighorns the way it had every night of his life. Early September. The first fall rain came a week early. Silas was on the roof of the horse barn, replacing a section of tin when the sky opened. It came down the way rain comes down at the base of the bighorns, hard and cold and all at once, without the courtesy of a warning cloud. He did not come down. He stood on the roof and let it soak through his shirt, and looked out over 47 acres of pasture that had turned green again. Real green, the color of ground that has been listened to. The head ditch was running. The keyline swales were holding. The blue grama plugs he had set on his knees in May were 3 inches taller than they had been at the end of August. He counted them out of habit, then stopped counting, because there were too many now, and that was the point. An engine on the road. He heard it before he saw it. The charcoal Ford F-350. Marlo pulled up under the eave of the porch and got out. She stood under the roofline and called up to him. "Come down, Silas." He came down. He climbed down the extension ladder and walked around the corner of the barn to where she was standing under the porch overhang. They stood a meter apart under the tin. The rain hit the roof so hard they had to speak up to be heard. "My father wants you to come to Thanksgiving." "I'll come. That's not really what I drove out here to ask." He waited. She looked at her boots for a moment. Then she looked back up at him. "Josie told me last week that she likes the way I tie my shoes. She said she has been practicing it. She said she wanted me to know." He smiled. It was the first real smile of the whole spring and summer, and it went all the way up. It was not held back. It was not measured. It was just there, on a man who had gone 6 months without letting it show. She smiled back. She had been carrying that smile a while too. He did not kiss her. He did not say anything about anything. He took off his outer coat, the canvas one, soaked through the shoulders, and he draped it over her shoulders. She let him. She did not move. The screen door banged. Josie came out from the house with a red umbrella, almost as tall as she was. She marched up in bare feet across the wet planking of the porch and pushed the umbrella into Marlo's hand with both of her own. "You have to stay dry, or you can't stay." Marlo took the umbrella. She did not open it. The three of them walked from the horse barn to the main house through the rain. Silas in the middle, Josie on his left, holding his hand, Marlo on his right, not holding his hand, just walking at the same pace. Neither of them said anything. The ground had already said it back in March.